I am recording.
Okay.
And farting.
Oh, well. Hello and welcome to the Never Heard of It podcast. This is Craig Moorhead. And have we ever got one for you today? But before that, in case you're looking for us when the podcast is not playing in your ear holes, you can find us online at www.neverheardpodcast.com. You can find us on Twitter with the handle @neverpodcast. And then you can find us on iTunes and Stitcher. Just look for us. We're there.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Yeah. And we've also started doing mini episodes between each larger episode. So if you didn't get if you didn't get episode 16.5, go check it out. Today, we're going to talk about the 1941 Fritz Lang movie, Manhunt. I had never heard of it, and I suggested it to Shawn, and it turns out he had never heard of it. I'm going to read a quick synopsis, and then I'm going to ask Shawn some questions. This is coming from the popular site imdb.com, British hunter Thorndyke, vacationing in Bavaria, has Hitler in his gun sight. He is captured, beaten, left for dead, and escapes back to London, where he is hounded by German agents and aided by a young woman. That's pretty much it.
I think so.
Does pretty much cover it. It does sound a little bizarre. I remember reading a synopsis early on and thinking that it was about a guy who was hunting Hitler, and that was the manhunt. So the whole thing was going to be this guy just trying to kill Hitler. So I was plenty surprised by what happened at the beginning. Shawn, what were your impressions going in and coming out?
Were you surprised for the better or for the worse?
I'd go neutral on that.
Hold off.
I certainly wasn't disappointed watching the movie. I thought it was very clever, the whole opening sequence. So I have to say, I was pretty pleased.
Yeah, I was too, and I didn't know anything about this whatsoever. I didn't look up the description or anything of the sort. I don't even think I saw the poster, really, before I jumped right in on Netflix. And yeah, that opening is so compelling, You do see the Nazi soldier kind of patrolling the area, You've got this guy, Walter Pidgeon, on a ledge with a rifle, and he puts the scope to his eye, and we see Hitler on a balcony. That he's got a kill shot right there, and he doesn't take it. He I think he pulls the trigger, the gun's not loaded, and he sort of just kind of waves off like as if it's a joke, like that kind of thing. And as far as compelling ways to start your movie, specifically in 1941, I'd say that's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
So I was on board with that. I'm kind of like you, that where's the title fitting in exactly? Because, shortly after this character that Walter Pidgeon plays gets captured and then released, and hunting plays a part into that. And so I kind of thought maybe we're getting into sort of like the most dangerous game.
Right.
And they talk about that a little bit to an extent that, the greatest hunt of all is obviously man. It's the most intelligent animal. And yes, this character is being more or less hunted, but not like in the woods hunted and being shot at. He does make it back to England, London, and goes from there. Yeah. We talked briefly about this beforehand. I think it's a pretty darn good movie here. There was at least 30, almost 45 minutes where I thought, Craig, you did it. You found a winner that was not on my radar whatsoever. And then we got to London, and it took a very significant tonal shift, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Well, that's the thing, I don't even know that I would want to pull 30 minutes out of it. I would just want to change that 30 minutes a little bit. And we might as well get right into it. So what we're talking about is, we're kind of talking about tonal shifts. And so in this movie, you go from this guy, Thorndyke. We think he's going to try to assassinate Hitler. He pulls the trigger, right? no bullet. He kind of waves at him, haha. Then he thinks twice. He puts the bullet in the gun, and he's about to shoot. And yeah, this Nazi soldier jumps on him, takes him back. He's a prisoner of the Nazis for a while. And so right here, the tone of it is Thorndike seems fairly at ease with this.
Right, and we should add this is I think it takes place in 1939, and forgive me if that was in your synopsis.
38 or 39. It wasn't, but yeah.
Yeah, so this is I wrote this down. This is England doesn't enter the war until 41, right?
Right, something like that, yeah.
I have to assume, obviously, there is knowledge of Hitler and what the Nazi Party at least stands for at the time of this movie. Whether the atrocities of what are known, they do allude to some of them. You know, there's decapitation is mentioned, and then, you know, this idea of Hitler wanting to play God. There's no mention of Holocaust or, you know, the Uber race or that kind of the actual, you know, slaughter of millions of Jews does not get brought up in the movie, I don't think.
No, not specifically.
So I think that's somewhat important to, you know, if you're sitting at home listening and wondering why the hell would this guy not kill Hitler
right.
You know, if you have that shot from the very first moment, I think that plays a part of it because at this point of the movie, he's just like this very crazy dictator, not necessarily the man who is literally trying to wipe part of the earth off, you know.
Right, and it is acknowledged at some point that at least our main character does hold views about Hitler. So enough is going on that he feels already pretty sour toward Hitler, as people probably should. So it's somewhat intense, and you have our main character being beaten and tortured because the Germans want him to sign this confession paper to say that the English government sent him to do this. And he refuses to because it's a lie. He just refuses. It's a lie. It's a lie. It's a lie. So it's pretty serious. It's looking pretty grim for Thorndike. Okay, and so then then the Nazis finally decide they're going to kill him and make it look like suicide, and they push him off a cliff. Uncleverly, they push him into some soft mud off of this cliff, and Thorndike survives, though it seems like barely. But now, barely, he's almost been murdered by the Nazis. He's trying to get away from them. It's a desperate race for his life. He gets on a boat where Roddy McDowall as a child is, who helps him, which is, I think, what we would all hope in that same situation is that Roddy McDowall would come and help us. And around there is when it starts to become a little looser, a little funnier, a little... I don't know how to say it. For a guy who's been through what he's been through, he's kind of like, oh, I hope I don't run into those characters again. Like that kind of thing. And it's like, no.
Well,
like there are Nazis hunting for you. You're not in good shape.
I have some feedback on that. And I honestly felt that way about, and this is specifically to the Thorndike character played by Walter Pidgeon. Even before that, there was just something in those moments. And a lot of, like, when we're saying, like, he's captured by the Nazis, he's beaten and tortured, you don't really see the beatings. Most of those scenes are him and Major Clive, or Quive Smith, or Quiv, I don't know how to say his name. The guy, George Saunders is the actor. Right. The German, he's a German major, a Nazi major, basically, who's, asking him to sign this thing. And a lot of it's just one-on-one dialogue between the two of them. Really smart, really... Like, I thought all that stuff was compelling. Mm-hmm. George Sanders, this actor, he speaks German with a German accent. It's totally believable. Yeah. There's no subtitles, at least where there's subtitles.
Not when they're speaking in German, no.
Yeah, not when they're speaking German. You still totally get kind of the major vibe of what's being implied. And, yeah, all of that stuff was really interesting. It was tense, but not... It didn't feel like he was being threatened from the word go, you know, it kind of builds to that. But still, I'm like you. I thought even then, he's not really responding the way that I think.
Yeah.
If I had been he just got beat up on the ledge, taken in this place. Like, he clearly knows who Hitler is and like what's going on at this point in 1939 or wherever. He knows enough to know that this is probably not good. and yet he's somewhat casual. And so when I was looking at Walter Pidgeon, because I don't really know that actor that well, I was looking at his bio and stuff on IMDb. He's been in a million movies. He was born in 1897, and from the silent era on, he's been in movies. He is quoted as saying, and I thought this was really interesting, "It takes a lot of work to appear easygoing, and I try to avoid being stuffy." And as soon as I read that, that made absolutely the most sense.
Sure.
As far as that's exactly how I describe his performance here.
Yeah.
Is at times it's way too easygoing and casual. And there are moments where he's genuinely threatened, and he gives that kind of what you would expect those reactions to be. But no, it's not necessarily from start to finish, but it really kicks in. Yeah. When he gets on that boat, when he leaves that boat and goes back to London, I think to his aunt and uncles, ultimately. But this is also sort of our introduction to an actress named Joan Bennett plays a character named Jerry Stokes.
Yes.
And I'm going to let you describe her, Craig. Because I want to be nice.
Sure.
And I want to be fair. And I don't think this is just because she's a woman. There's another female in this movie. There's only two of them, I think. The Lady Alice character, that actress, Heather Thatcher, I thought she was fantastic. Sure. Some really strong reactions.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Joan Bennett for just a second, because that's the biggest tonal shift for me, bar none.
Yeah. So our hero gets off the boat. He thinks he's safe. And so in that way, I kind of buy him being a little more easygoing. But almost as soon as he's off the boat, he's being pursued again by these people. So he knows he's in trouble. And
being warned by Roddy McDowall's little boy character that, I don't know. I had a bad feeling about that guy that was on the boat, there's enough to know
that, things aren't okay.
Look out.
Right. Mm-hmm. So he's pursued by these guys through the streets of London. He ends up running into this apartment building and running into Joan Bennett, who is playing Jerry. Now, he takes her up to her apartment so he can hide out. And that's where begins one of the toughest parts of this movie, and it brings a lot of questions to the forefront. And one of them is the accents throughout the entire movie. Now, from the beginning, you have, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from the beginning, you have Thorndike, who is supposed to be from England, supposed to be from London, right?
In theory only.
Right. But I mean, apparently that's his home. London is his home. Couldn't sound more like a Midwesterner as far as I'm concerned.
Walter Pidgeon does not even attempt an English
Doesn't
accent.
attempt one. And that's fine.
Not even close.
No.
He's actually Canadian.
Oh, okay.
As he was born there and then became a citizen in the U.S. much later. Yeah. He doesn't specifically sound Canadian to me. I think Midwestern is a good label for those wanting to imagine this at home. Absolutely not even 2% British. Right. Not even 2%.
No.
I'm not even going to give him that.
Doesn't even care. And that's fine. I think that's fine. If an English accent was too much for him and it was going to be distracting, great. Leave it on the side of the road.
The German accents were nailed.
Exactly.
And I think that was important.
Okay. I'll disagree with you there.
The Germans, when they were speaking German.
Yes, that
German characters when they spoke
that was perfectly
German.
fine. And I'm not sure if what I wanted was like a campy Hogan's Heroes German accent. Maybe that was my problem. Yeah. But like Clive, that was an English accent. Again, fine.
Yeah,
that's fine. I buy that. It's fine.
But Joan Bennett
is, and I didn't read up on her. And I'll ask you if you did. Is she an American actress?
She is from New Jersey, Craig.
Okay, so Joan Bennett. I'm going to take your credit for that information. So Joan Bennett is an actress from New Jersey, Shawn. I don't know if you know this. And
I did.
And they have her affecting this deep and chaotic Cockney accent. And it's rough because there's nothing about her that suggests to me that she's a poor actress. In fact, she has a lot of really good moments but her accent just jumps right out in front of her, and it does kind of drive you crazy. It just ruins moments that are already a little tipsy, because the other part of this begins sort of this odd romantic comedy section of the movie. So our man Thorndike is still being pursued by the Nazis. Who is it? Is it his brother or his uncle?
I think it is his brother, actually,
Okay.
now that you say that.
But
he does appear a bit older.
Right. But
This is Lord Gerald and Lady Alice Risborough.
yeah. And so, and basically what he goes to them, and basically what they're telling him is, we're not going to be able to help you. Essentially, like if things go wrong here, you're going to be in trouble. And Thorndike decides he's really going to go on the run.
And well, prior to that, again, it just felt like, yeah, here's somebody else telling you, maybe you should take this more seriously than you are. Because, yeah, he does feel like I'm back home.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of safety provided to me. I just need to clear up this whole mess,
Yeah.
There's a bit of that. But then it's also that sort of trope of, well, now you've involved this girl. Mm-hmm. Who had nothing to do with you, and you sort of, just literally walked into their lives. And you kind of keep having to invent ways to bring her along.
Right.
Where in real life, A, that woman might call the cops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or B, you would say thank you and go your separate ways.
Yeah.
And that's always hard to pull off in fiction, I think,
I think you're right. And I think, it's generally Jerry who is clinging to him and not wanting him to go for some reason. She is 100% in love with this man who's being pursued by the Nazis and doesn't want to go anywhere without him. And that's fine. I guess here's the thing that I really want to get to here is there's no way that Fritz Lang, he must know about these shifts in the story. This is a conscious choice that we're going to have this stuff where you're pursued. It's a thriller. And then you end up with this girl and you're going to have these moments where, where she goes and gets you fish and chips. And it's this cute moment where she's feeding you fish and chips and you're laughing about jokes and stuff. And meanwhile, the Nazis are hunting you.
I think some of this is of the era. Mm-hmm. I kept thinking of Hitchcock while watching this, something like North by Northwest or one of these just like you got the wrong guy kind of movies,
right.
And I think he definitely, Hitchcock in the ones that he did really, really well, he stuck to that tone. Mm-hmm. But I do think, it's just, some of these studio movies, like you got to have a girl in there and it's got to be a romantic thing. And so
sure.
They just met 10 minutes ago, but clearly, yeah, like you say, like she's sort of into him, and it was easy to look at in 2016 and even be just disappointed by the whole thing because it felt like, okay, she's from a lower class. Like they're doing everything they can to basically just say, she's uneducated, mm-hmm. Got nothing going on, should be absolutely grateful for the fact that this guy is offering to pay her back after she loaned him a bit of money to get home. And then they even play the gag that his, I guess, maybe sister-in-law, Thorndike's sister-in-law, this Lady Alice character, when they're, describing, Thorndike is asking for a bit of money from his brother to pay her back. It's sort of implied that Lady Alice might be thinking, well, what the hell just happened? Was she a prostitute? Like it just, or an escort of some kind, like, which I liked that moment. Mm-hmm. I thought, that was kind of funny and I loved her reactions to that. But yeah, like, and then knowing that, it's like, how does this tone shift gel with the rest of the movie? How do these performances gel with that accent, all that stuff?
Yeah.
And that's what it is. It hangs over the picture, I think, unfortunately, right when you sort of want to just be really, really pulled in and invested. I'll admit my mind did wander a little bit during the middle of this. But then I think it came back around. I don't know. Did you sort of feel that way about that third act?
Oh, for sure. And I thought...
I don't want to skip over anything, but if we can jump to that, I thought, man, it made a really good recovery.
We definitely can. And actually, I was going to say, a part of it for me, as I was watching that stuff and just how, parts of the movie feel like there are no Nazis at all and we're in a completely different movie. And I was wondering if it was sort of Lang's way of portraying this guy. I was thinking, maybe this is just portraying him as, this is one of these aloof, rich types who everything always works out for them. They're never really in a lot of danger because they have rich friends. So even if they get in a tough spot, they'll be fine. I think like that could explain a lot of it, but not all of it. I mean, definitely some of it just kind of doesn't work. But I was thinking maybe that was kind of a part of it because you have Lang was very, very anti-Nazi, and this is a very anti-Nazi movie. I mean, it's hard not to be anti-Nazi, but in 1941, where all the bad stuff hadn't quite happened yet.
Yeah, and like I read that he had actually been asked by Joseph Goebbels to head up the German Cinema Institute during, when the Nazis became party, and that obviously went to Leni Riefenstahl later. He turned it down. He was a Catholic, and got out of there, thankfully. And I think this is the first, Manhunt is the first of 4 sort of anti-Nazi movies that he made. The rich aloof man, I mean, that is kind of interesting. He's definitely naive as a character, and intentionally so, which I do think is really, really interesting. And maybe it's part of that too is the message that because look, let's not forget this movie came out before Hitler died and before the war was over. So this is also sort of a warning, not unlike, Chaplin's a great dictator. Take these people seriously.
Yeah.
And I think there's some of that, the rest, I mean, look, America was still sleeping at the same, at this time as well. As far as entering the war. But gosh, I don't know. I wish it still made me want him to then really have his core fundamentally shaken.
Yeah. Well,
by just how naive he was then.
But I think you kind of do get that moment.
You do, ultimately, I think so.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what the third act is, and as you were saying before, like you kind of perked up at the third act, and the third act is Clive catches up with Thorndike, and they have their showdown, and that showdown is very, very tense.
It takes place in a cave. I mean, come on, like you got to see that, if nothing else. I think like that whole thing was just fantastic. To me, that's where I feel like, okay, that's where this is what this director is sinking his teeth into. And it's like maybe that's the movie he really, really wanted to make, and some of this other stuff had to come along with it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe.
I'm just making a guess, an assumption that in the studio system, some of that's going to happen.
Yeah. I agree.
But,
I agree. And I mean, even the note that he leaves you on, this movie had to basically go through the Hays Code or the Hays Office, and it was classified originally, or at least called a hate film. Like they felt like Germans were being portrayed negatively, that all of them were just evil and just wanted to kill people.
Isn't that something?
And I mean, looking back on it, I mean, there weren't any just normal. I don't think there were any normal German characters. They were all Nazis.
But you know what? I'm totally fine with that. Like I don't, it's like enough of two characters do not make an entire population. Like they're not representing anything beyond who they are in this case.
Our main character stalks Hitler at his compound, is captured by Nazis. Like who else is he going to encounter? Exactly, like, why would he encounter the nice German chambermaid who comes in? Like, no, that would have been a little... Well, it would have been too much fat on this thing. Like, this is a pretty lean movie. There's not a lot of characters. There's not a lot of... I don't know. It's not a ton of scenes. It's not like an epic movie. It's really between just these characters. And, I mean, at the end, it's between Thorndike and Clive. So,
Yeah, kind of how it started.
Exactly.
Which I think is kind of cool. Let's talk about, I mean, I kind of feel like we should talk about that last couple scenes.
Sure.
Because I do think it's not a huge spoiler or anything like that, and it informs this movie a lot and informs what you're talking about with the Hays Code. Basically, Thorndike gets out alive, and he suffers some, mental setbacks. He spends some time in a hospital. But then you're left with the sort of fleeting moments of the movie are him going back to, I guess, the British Royal Air Force, joining up, going out on a mission, and jumping the hell out of the plane before he's supposed to.
Right.
His parachute opens, he's got his rifle, and you're left knowing that this man, who's one of the most skilled hunters in the world, big game hunters in the world, which is what's set up in the beginning, is going into Germany by himself, obviously with the intent to go do what he should have done and kill Hitler. Right. And I think that was probably where that specific rub came from the Hays Code office, because you're rooting for a person, a fictional character, to go assassinate a real person.
Yeah.
I kind of, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think of, there was some dang movie recently that sort of dealt with some of this stuff, I think.
Well, I mean, there was The Interview.
Yes, that's it. That's absolutely it. Yeah, I don't know. I'd be curious to know, and I'm sure, I assume somebody's made a movie or something that talks about assassinating some American figure in the past 30 years. Don't know how we would react to that. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I can almost understand where the Hays Code is coming from in this instance.
I guess that is the thing. I mean, the Interview is first and foremost a comedy. So it can kind of sidestep a lot of that.
Totally, yeah. In the same way that I think Dr. Strangelove does with, I mean, the guy's jumping out on a bomb at the end of the movie. Like,
right.
It's a nuclear
Whereas this movie
warfare.
is clearly advocating someone should go and hunt down Hitler and kill him. I mean, there's no question about that at the end.
No doubt.
It's not a satire of any kind. So yeah, I mean, what would it be? I mean, if someone, if we made a dramatic movie about someone who is dropped behind enemy lines in North Korea, or just in North Korea,
or Syria,
to hunt him down. I mean, and that's the whole point of it. I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to say that someone definitely compares to Hitler.
I mean, just last week on my Facebook feed, everybody and their grandmother was comparing Donald Trump to Hitler. So,
well, yeah, but I mean, I certainly don't want to advocate to assassinate Donald Trump.
Yeah, and you don't want to advocate for censorship. I mean, if a movie is a work of fiction, that should kind of be the end of the discussion.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, when you're talking about Hitler, yeah, generally it's just like, well, that's acceptable. You can accept that we're talking about going and killing a person. Which really just brought me to the question of, okay, so if he hunted Hitler, shot him right between the eyes, put him down, how does the war end? Or does someone just kind of step into his place? I mean, he's Hitler. You can't really just
and 41
replace him.
Or 39.
But it seems like if you've already got this army, you're already marching into places, you've already bombed a bunch of places. Is just taking down Hitler going to stop all this? I mean, certainly it'd be good. It would certainly be a way to weaken it. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I got into that and then realized I didn't have any knowledge whatsoever of military history, and so I promptly stopped thinking about it.
Good.
But
that's what we always do.
Yeah, but it's a really interesting movie. It was handled very well, and I'm sure if I watched it again, which I very well may, I'd get even more out of it.
Let's talk about. I just wanted to highlight like a few little favorite.
Yeah, let's talk about moments.
So cool. There's so much awesome, just juicy film nerd stuff going on in this movie. Like the opening, like even just in the forest. Like I don't know if you remember those opening couple shots. Like you got this great dolly. There's a really cool dissolve to like an extreme close up on the footprints of, I guess, Thorndike. But the way the light is coming through the forest and the trees, and I mean, I'm sure all that is a set, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Like, it's weird, but the first thing I thought of was E.T. Like, E.T. in the forest at night, and the light, like the way you see the beams of light that they film those. Like, this is where that's coming from. Like, you can see the direct influence of all that stuff, and like I'm sure it's bleeding over a little bit from like the work that he did in film noir. But when they get to London, as much as I kind of lost a bit of interest. Mm-hmm. It looks awesome, dude. Like, the London fog is thick. You got the street lamps. It looks like where Jack the Ripper would be killing somebody. Mm-hmm. Like, it fits the mood of the intensity, even when Walter Pidgeon is being easygoing, as he said, in his performance. And like, there was a shot where Thorndike is being dragged by the two Nazi guards, kind of in that opening bit. And the camera just focuses on the little tracks left by his shoes in the carpet,
Yeah, and like that same moment, which is one of my favorite scenes in it, is after they drag him in, they put him in a chair, and you only see his shadow on the floor. Like
all his dialogue is you never see his face on any of it. You just see the German major, super duper cool. But like that stuff with the feet on the carpet, like. Do you remember that scene in No Country for Old Men?
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
Javier Bardem like strangles the guy, and like you see his shoes make the scuff marks on the floor. Like this guy was doing that stuff in 1941. It's amazing. Yeah. Really, really cool.
And I think the reason it was shot that way was at least partially because of the Hays Code, because they didn't want to show any actual torture or beatings.
So much better, man.
Exactly. And I was like,
yeah, it's such a
benefit. Man, the scene where like Quive is trying to convince him to sign this paper so things don't get worse, and all you can see is his head hung down, like the shadow of his head hung down. Man, it's good stuff.
If you ever are interested in looking at, I need to watch a movie that has good insert shots like this. Watch this damn movie. Yeah. Everything, like there's so many just like tight close-ups on objects that tell you exactly what you need to know, like the little setting on the rifle to determine the yardage for the scope, like those footprints and all that stuff, man. It's so good.
In the cave, he's got this basically an air hole, so that when Thorndike is in the cave, he can get air into the cave, and he's looking out at Quive through the air hole, and it kind of took me back to him looking through the scope. Just some of that kind of stuff that matched up, and I don't know. It was very man, yeah. Except for those accents and some of the tone, it was very sure-footed. And on that note, Shawn, let's talk about how to remake this, reboot it, or sequelize.
I think this is one of the rare ones where it's a damn good movie that could actually be improved by a remake.
Yeah.
So yes, that's what I would vote for that.
Would you keep it in the same time period, or would you try and update it?
I would keep it in the same time period. I think so. I think it would be interesting. The difficulty, I think, now is like post Valkyrie, you would sort of crave some sort of true story connection to it, like you kind of want that tidbit of information that you could go look up, or based on a novel or something like that. I don't quite know what the alternative would be unless you're doing some sort of North Korea or fictional, Syria story or something like that. But I mean, it's just like we're talking about. Hitler is going to be ripe for stories about killing him and make the ultimate villain until the end of time, I think.
Well, and especially this one has such a good angle on it, too.
For sure.
Where it's not just a bunch of serious men standing around, how do we get rid of Hitler? It's like, this guy is just doing it for funsies. I mean, that's a great opening.
Yeah. Thoughts on actors?
That's a good question. Do you have any?
Yeah, I do, actually. And it's weird because like everybody I thought of was already in Glorious Bastards. I mean, I feel like the modern counterpoint to Major Clive Smith would be the German Major would be Christoph Waltz.
Sure.
Instantaneously, and yet I don't think you can do that because of Inglourious Bastards. That said, I think a really cool Thorndike would be somebody like Benedict Cumberbatch or Michael Fassbender, who was in Inglourious Bastards. I think either of those dudes would be awesome. And there's probably a lot other. I did think of Jack O'Connell, who we talked about from Start Up. He's a little young to do an exact translation. But
I think contractually we'd have to put Oscar Isaac in it because he has to be in everything, doesn't he?
And Robert De Niro.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, look, we should learn from this movie and get somebody who can genuinely do a British accent. I don't care if it's Irish, Scottish.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just get me to Great Britain in the UK, and we'll call it close enough. My pick would be Fassbender or Cumberbatch for that. And then I think for the German guy, I think Daniel Bruhl is a really interesting actor. And, Inglourious Bastards, I don't think he had any scenes with Michael Fassbender, so maybe you could get away with that. But beyond that, I don't know. I feel like I would want, again, someone who's at least European, if not specifically German.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and without doing Christoph Waltz, I'm kind of at a loss.
But then who would be Jerry?
I'm gonna go with my answer for every European woman, and that is Marion Cotillard. I know she's French, but I love her.
That was
so
easy.
Much. She's so good.
That one was pretty easy.
Yeah. Hey, Craig, I got last two things on Manhunt, and it's really just about the people involved that I thought was kind of cool. Walter Pidgeon, was the president of SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, from 52 to 57, and that was right at the height of the whole Red Scare, the communist, the blacklist thing or whatever. And I guess he blew the whistle on this film, Salt of the Earth, that was being made by a producer who was blacklisted. And, man, that's kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So I kind of, I didn't get a good sense of what the overall impression of Pidgeon is after that, or because of that, or if that really sort of had any kind of impact on what the rest of the industry thought of him after that. I don't know. It's kind of cool. Also, here's a good question for you. Walter Pidgeon is one of only 2 Canadians to be nominated for Best Actor. Can you name the other one? And I'll give you a hint. He was nominated in 2007.
2007? A Canadian nominated for Best Actor. In 2007.
Only other Canadian. Isn't that crazy? Only 2 Canadians nominated for Best Actor. Neither of which won, by the way. Sorry, Canada.
Yeah. You're out of luck.
I would not have got this. There's no way on earth. But he is a very, very, very prominent, popular actor right now.
Well, this may surprise you, but I don't remember who any of the nominees were for the 2007 Best Actor Oscars.
I had a feeling you might not. It's Ryan Gosling.
Oh, wow.
From London, Ontario, was nominated for Half Nelson.
Why are we so harsh on our Canadian
I don't know.
Folks?
I mean, I feel like Eugene Levy deserves an Oscar for something, right? He's Canadian.
Man. Yeah, no kidding. Oscar's so American, you know what I mean?
And then I thought you would like this. Joan Bennett, who we've kind of been picking on a little bit because of that accent. She was in a million things. She was in the Dark Shadows TV show. Her last movie, Craig. Mm-hmm. Suspiria.
Really?
Yeah.
Who did she play in Suspiria?
She played a woman.
Okay, I figured.
Named Mrs. Madame Blanc.
Wow, how do I not know that? I got to watch that again.
Yeah, that's
Hey, where is our buddy's Suspiria remake anyway?
I don't know. I don't think it's happening. I mean, it's been so long.
All right. Well, people, if anyone out there wants to see a Suspiria remake, make your voices heard, because there's one just sort of gestating out there, and it should be and could be done.
Should be and could be.
Should
Okay,
be,
that's
could
all
be.
I have.
All right,
for
well, that's
Manhunt.
great. Thank you very much for the trivia,
like
Shawn.
trivia.
You've made all our days a little brighter.
I try.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about what's going to be on the next episode.
It will. Okay, Craig, I got one movie for you. And if you've heard of it, man, I'm going to be mad. But not terribly surprised, okay?
Okay, yeah.
Craig,
Yes.
how would you like to swim in a movie called The Black Sea?
Definitely, yes.
You have?
Yes.
Dude, come on.
Well, let me
How
ask
many
this.
submarine movies get made these days? This is a submarine movie from 2014 with Jude Law and Ben
Jude Law,
Mendelsohn.
yeah.
I gotta watch this movie.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But if we haven't heard of every movie that we bring up, then it kind of loses its flavor, maybe. I'll try not to have heard of the next thing you say.
Try not to hear of anything.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Craig. You don't want to swim in the Black Sea. You don't want to ride a submarine. It's fine. How about we take a little road trip to a movie called Phoenix? Have you heard of Phoenix?
I have not heard. I've heard of the place.
Okay. This is not just a place. This is a movie.
Okay. I've heard of the bird.
Okay, it's not about the bird.
Sort of thing. But I've not heard of the movie Phoenix, no.
2014. It's a recent movie.
Mm-hmm.
It stars some people who I believe are German.
German people.
So,
Some of
not
my
only-
favorite people in the world are
Well,
German.
look what I'm saying. Like, this is actually going to help us cast our remake
Yeah.
of Manhunt. So I think we got to watch it.
Okay.
So yeah, everybody go get on Netflix with your nets and your flixes and let's watch Phoenix, come back and talk about it. We'll fill out our cast for Manhunt. We'll speak fluent German.
That's a good
And I have a feeling we're going to completely change our outlook on Hitler.
I love it.
Did I say that out loud?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's okay.
Let's
It was
strike that
bold.
from the record.
Okay.
I think we're going to have our feelings about Hitler affirmed. I don't think this has anything to do with Hitler. I don't really know, to be quite honest. I just know it's supposed to be good. I'm excited to watch it. This is what this podcast is about. You know, we know little about these movies. We know enough that we want to see them. That's what Phoenix is for me.
And no matter how little we know, it never stops us from talking about it.
It sure doesn't.
That's what's so inspiring, I think, about us.
Yeah, so why don't you come talk about it with us and bring all the little knowledge that you have. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitter. And as always, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. Absolutely.
And I guess until then, keep an eye on the clock and the foot on the dock.
Oh, yes, that was good. I like that one.